Good morning, friends. Continuing with our morning series and meeting on the other side of the last lecture. Summarizing what we have finished so far, we have touched upon the title at the beginning. Then we went into some topics, important subtopics in introduction. Then we went into the second chapter, literature review. We went into the third chapter, methodologies, and did a few important subtopics there. Now we are coming back to the introduction chapter where we speak about research questions, hypotheses, and research objectives. To start with, if I were to give you a child's perspective to the whole research process, because I think this is one of the last mountain peaks is yet to conquer. So I'll take you to the whole process with from a child's perspective. Suppose a child looks out in the open from his garden and sees a rainbow. He's excited about it as well as curious. So he asks himself, how is this rainbow formed? Why it is formed? Where does it begin? Where does it end? How high it is? Can I go and touch it? And so on and so forth. So this is the initial session where a lot of questions come to his mind. Then he goes to the library in the science section and reads a lot of literature on rainbows. Now he has a better idea about rainbows. So he thinks, let me work on the question how the rainbow is formed. So now he has come to a stage where he asks a specific question. Having asked this specific question, now what he wants to do is he wants to replicate the rainbow in order to see how it is formed. So when he decides to replicate that rainbow, he is in a way speaking about an objective to do something. Now, before he sets up to do his experiment about the rainbow, he tells himself, I'm sure when I spray water in the air in front of the sunshine rays, there will be a rain. This is nothing but a hypothesis. And when he conducts the experiment and he sees for himself, indeed a rainbow is formed, then he says, wow, really the rainbow is formed. Now what is this? This is accepting the hypothesis. So in this process, in order to test the making of the rainbow, he decided to do an experiment. So that is what methodology is all about. So in this short example, the boy had a few questions, then he decided on a single question, then he decided on what objective he'll work on. That led him to decide on the methodology. He did literature review in the process, and in the end he came up with a hypothesis, tested it, and accepted the hypothesis. In short, this is the whole research process actually. So if the child can get it, we can get it. Having said that, we'll take a serious look from an academic point of view as to what research questions, research objectives, and research hypothesis is all about. So research questions. Now, what does it say? Guides the direction, scope, and objectives of the investigation. So if you look at the child's rainbow example, all these questions, all these points will be answered: direction, scope, objectives. A good research question emerges from curiosity and systematic observation. What did the child do? He saw the rainbow, he was curious, he did systematic observation, he did literature review. It transforms a general problem into a specific inquiry. So, looking at the rainbow was a general problem. So many questions came up in his mind. Then he zeroed in onto a specific question: how the rainbow is made or how does it form. It narrows the scope and makes the study manageable. So before he had so many questions: where does it start, where does it end, how high it is, can I touch it, and so on and so forth. But he zeroed in on one single question: how the rainbow is formed. It should be answerable through data, observation, and experimentation. See, he observed, he went to the library to collect data, then he experimented. See, one simple query can lead you into so many things. Insignificant questions waste time and resources. So if you are not to be specific, then maybe he would not know where to start, where to end. It would be such a waste of time, and anyway you would have forgotten about the rainbow. Let's see scientifically what process the child went through, or what process a researcher goes through while coming up with research questions. So first you choose a broad topic. So his broad topic was about the rainbow. Then you do literature review. Like he went to the library and read a lot of things about rainbow. In the library there are many sections. Within the science section there are many books, but he zeroed in on books regarding rainbow. Then he refined his question. There were so many questions he had in mind. Now he refined his question: how the rainbow is made. Then he finalized this question. Now, let's take an example of a research question. If you look at a school situation, as a teacher, like the child, you are interested to know if you use a different teaching method, like a activity-based teaching method, would it improve or impact the learning behavior or the learning outcome of the learner. So your research question could be: does the use of activity-based learning improve students' academic achievement compared to the traditional lecture method? So you see the components: activity-based learning, improving students' academic achievement compared to traditional lecture method. So now you have come to a focused question. That is what research question is all about. So let's take this research question and see if it fits in the process we just spoke about. So the first thing we spoke about is broad topic. Let's see how this research question came about to be through a broad topic. So what could be the broad topic be? Performance of my class is failing. What can I do to change this? Should I change teaching strategy, or should I do something else? It's a broad topic about an issue you face, right? Then the next step is literature review. So in the literature review, you pick up this question and then you find out new alternative teaching learning methodologies like flipped classroom, activity-based learning, gaming apps. You have seen that they are showing promise. That's what the recent research is showing. So now you can refine your question. Your question is: why my class is failing? Now you can refine a question and say, which of these are best suited given my school resources, learner capabilities, to improve class performance? So see, now you have refined the question. Finally, you will come to the question which we have stated a little while ago. Does the use of activity-based learning improve students' academic achievement compared to the traditional lecture method? So you see, we have methodically followed this process and have come to that research question we have just stated. Now, from the research questions come research objectives. Research questions still are general. Research objectives give you a command. Research question is what you are about to inquire, what comes up to your mind. Research objective is your intention to do something. The child saw the rainbow, some questions came up, then his intention was to try to replicate the rainbow. So that was his objective. So to do something, to express your intention, that's what objectives are all about. So research objectives are specific goals or purposes that a study aims to achieve. Just like you want to check if the new methodology is effective, just like the child wanted to check if he can replicate the rainbow. They guide the direction of research by clearly stating what the researcher intends to explore and describe. We've already discussed this several times. Well-defined objectives help in selecting appropriate methods and tools for data collection. For example, the child's objective was well defined. So now it led on to him choosing a research methodology of experimentation. So that's how he collected data. He did this, he did that. Ultimately, he could manage a range. Same thing with your class. You will use your new teaching methodology. So you will use it as a experiment in your class, and then take results by asking them to enter a test and then see the scores. They also provide a basis for evaluating the success and relevance of the study's findings. So, for example, the child, his objective was to test if the rainbow can be formed the way it is said in the literature. So, in the end, he can test whether his experiment failed or was successful. So, when you are clear with your objectives, it also becomes a way of evaluating your research results. So, just like questions, even research objectives has a process. And what is that process? First, you identify the research problem, like the child. So, what do you do in that process? You understand the issue or the gap. He went to the library and he tried to understand the issue. Example, investigating why high school students are showing low interest in science subject. If this is your issue, then your research objective finally will focus on this issue. Review of related literature. We have done time and time again that you go and search for relevant things regarding this topic. Example, reviewing past student studies on factors affecting student motivation in STEM education. Science, technology, and so on. Engineering, maths. STEM is science, technology, engineering, maths. So next step is you define key variables and scope. Determine what will be studied and the boundaries. So example, student interest, teaching methods, classroom environment, scope. So your variables would be student interest or teaching methods. Your scope would be grades. So you will decide whether I want to study which class. So you decide, okay, I'll study 9 to 12th class for my research. So it helps you to define the variables and the scope. Translate problem into specific objectives. You had a problem of your class losing its standards of score outcome. So now you have specifically come to a question that can I use activity-based learning to see if their scores can be improved. Convert problem into clear, measurable goals. To examine the impact of interactive teaching methods on student interest. So it is your intention. See, objectives means your intentions to do something. So let's go to a research objective examples. But before we go to the example, first let's visit the research question and see if our research objective mirrors the research question. So what does the research question say? Does the use of activity-based learning improve students' academic compared to the traditional lecture method? So there are three parts: activity-based learning, students' academic achievement and traditional lecture method. That's what your question. So now we said objective means to do something, your intention to do something. So let's see what the objective says. To study. See, your intention to study. The impact of activity based learning. This is there in the question. On academic achievement. This is there in the question. Of boys and girls in the study group. See, one objective. Now let's see if you can have a second objective. Second objective is, once again, it should come out of the research question. To compare, see again, to compare, your intention to do something. Effectiveness of activity-based learning. See, activity-based learning is mirroring the research question. And traditional lecture method again is mirroring the research question. In enhancing students' understanding of concepts again is mirroring to the research question. So see how the research objectives get filtered out of the research question. Now, having said that, we will move on to research hypothesis. See, research question is your query. Research objective is your intention to do something. Research hypothesis is your prediction that it will be this way. So, research hypothesis is always in a statement form. It is your prediction. So, questions, intention, and prediction. QIP. So, when you predict something, you say, I think this will happen. So, hypothesis also gives the same statement. So, let's see what it really says over here about research hypothesis. A hypothesis is a tentative statement. See, I said statement that proposes a relationship between variables, that says that, okay, I believe this will happen. I believe that the new teaching method will improve the scoring capacity of the students. The child says, I believe when I spray water in the sunshine rays, there will be a rainbow. See, is belief. It is a statement that it will happen. It provides a possible answer to the research problem that will be tested with data. See, what are you doing? You, from question, you come to objective. Now you'll do the experiment and then you have data to answer this question which you have raised in your research question and say whether your hypothesis or the statement you have said or your hunch will be true or false. A good hypothesis is clear, specific, testable, and grounded in prior knowledge. Grounded in prior knowledge, research literature. Testable, you're doing experiment. Specific, you have clearly said that I want to test whether this new research, whether this new teaching methodology will improve the score of the student. Very clear. It guides the design, data collection, analysis of the study. Why it guides? Because now, like the child, he decided to do experiment. You are deciding to do also experiment. It can be other ways also, but here we are discussing about experiment. Insignificant questions waste time and resources. So whether it's a hypothesis, whether it's a objective, whether it's a research question, anything insignificant, not focused, will waste time. So what are the sources of research hypothesis? Theoretical frameworks like what you did in your literature review derived from established theories. Example, using Piaget's cognitive development theory to hypothesize that younger children learn concepts better than hands-on activities. This is just an example of how you use a theory. There can be many other theories. Previous research findings. Again, literature review based on trends or results of earlier studies. Prior studies show students who engage in peer learning perform better, or prior studies show that activity-based has a better performance chances of the students' score. Practical observations from classroom and field observations, experiences. You have gone to a school to do some observation and you see the teacher teaching in this style. You think, oh, this is very good because the student's response is very good. Example, observing students in classroom with interactive boards seem more engaged. Logical reasoning and intuition. Sometimes you have an intuition. Sometimes you feel this should work based on, so many things you have experienced, seen, read. So using deductive and inductive logic. Intuition suggests that motivated students spend more time on assignments. For example, my way of teaching. My intuition says that The more you engage the learners, the more you come up with real life examples, the more you bring out a laugh in them in the learning process. The attention that you get will be better. They will be better motivated to attend the class, and their learning will be better. So you see, this is just the intention, and then you apply. Of course, I have not done any scientific research with that, but you see, I wanted to explain what intuition is all about. So, formulation of research hypothesis. Again, just like the process of research questions, research objectives, even research hypothesis goes through formulation. You identify the research problem similar to the question and to the research objective. You review literature, you define the variables, you formulate the possible relationship. Does it increase the learner scores? Does it impact the learner scores? Do this new method impact the boys' learning score better than the girls' learning score? So on and so forth. Then refine the testable statement. Then in your hypothesis you say this will happen. State the hypothesis. Now you are clearly stating that I believe that teaching methodology, if it is a interactive based or activity based, will improve the learning scores. Now here you are giving your prediction very clearly. So based on that prediction, now we are going to into a technical part, that when you come up with a statement, research custom or research tradition says that you state it in a null hypothesis and alternate hypothesis. Now, why null hypothesis and alternate hypothesis? Research says that you are never sure of anything. Given the circumstances, if they change, things will change. So you don't be sure about your results, because if some situation changes, the results can change. So out of humility, you should start by saying that this will not happen. My prediction will not happen. So the child will start with a prediction that says, if I sprinkle water in the sunshine rays, no rainbow will happen. So that is null hypothesis. So when the rainbow indeed happens, then he'll say, I reject the null hypothesis. And what is the alternate hypothesis? Alternate hypothesis is exactly what you want to predict. So alternate hypothesis is H1 and null hypothesis is H2. So this is just a technical part of the research process. Don't break your head too much over it. So let's see, let's see further that. Again, this is the technical part. It says there are different types of hypothesis, like we just tasted a little while ago about null hypothesis and research hypothesis. So research hypothesis, null hypothesis. Let's see officially what it says. Is a testable statement or prediction about the relationship between two or more variables. It's what a researcher expects to find. See, the prediction. So research hypothesis or an alternate hypothesis is a hypothesis where you predict something will happen. What is a null hypothesis? It is a activity in humility. You says no, this will not happen. So you are trying to be humble, but you hope this will happen. When it happens, then you say, yay, this has happened. A lot of drama baji in research. States that there is no relationship or difference between the variables being served. That means it states it will not happen. What I am thinking will happen. Is the default assumption that nothing has changed and no effect exists. Apart from humility, it also plays a role of being objective. So if you start with saying that no, I believe it will happen, then you may tend to force things for it to happen. You will not allow it to happen and then say it has happened. So in order to be objective and take subjectivity out, you start with a null hypothesis. So when you have a research hypothesis, there can be two types, directional and non-directional. Now what is directional? It gives direction. What is non-direction? It does not give direction. It does not say you are here or you are there. So what does directional say? Specifies whether the independent variable will increase or decrease the dependent variable. So what it says, whether it will increase or decrease. So what it does, it gives a direction. So what is the example? Students taught using interactive methods will score higher. See, it gives a direction, higher. It comes out of the research hypothesis, but it gives a direction. It will be higher. Now, what is non-directional? It will be neither higher or neither lower. You are not committed to that. So what it says indicates that the relation exists, but you don't specify whether it will increase or decrease. So example, so there is a significant difference in maths performance between students taught with gaming methods and students taught with traditional methods. So you are not committed because maybe you don't know. Maybe you really want to go and find out. But in directional hypothesis, maybe you have an experience that it does happen that way. So here you are sure it will happen. So you start with a directional hypothesis. So now let's look at a example of research hypothesis. But let's start with the research question. Does it flow from the research question? Does it flow out of the research objective? So what did the research question say when we began? Does the use of activity-based learning improve students' academic achievement compared to the traditional lecture method? Three parts: activity-based, student achievement, and traditional lecture method. So you came up with the objectives. We went through this seriously a little while ago to study the impact of activity-based learning on academic achievement of boys and girls, to compare the effectiveness of activity-based learning and traditional lecture methods in enhancing students' understanding of concepts. It's come out of the question. Now let's see if this follows in the objectives. So what is your research hypothesis? Students taught through activity-based learning. Does it reflect in your research objectives? Yes. Does it reflect in your research question? Yes. Will achieve higher academic scores. So academic scores, does it reflect in your objectives? Yes. Does it reflect in your questions? Yes. Through traditional lecture method. Does it reflect in your research objectives? Yes. Does it reflect in your research question? Yes. So hypothesis filters down from research questions and research objectives. They cannot be different than what you have worked your whole time on the whole research project. Again, null hypothesis is you will say, no, it does not happen. There will be no significant difference in academic achievement between students taught through activity-based learning and those taught through the normal traditional lecture method. See, you say in null hypothesis, you say you don't happen. So this is a clear example. Now we'll see how this research hypothesis takes the form of directional and non-directional. So in directional hypothesis, it will reflect exactly the research hypothesis. The students taught through research-based activity will achieve a higher academic score than those taught through traditional lecture method. So you are saying higher, you are giving a clear direction. Now non-directional, there will be significant difference. See, you are saying significant difference, but you are not committing higher or lower. There will be significant difference in academic achievement between students taught through activity-based learning and those taught through traditional lecture method. So now you are not committed. You are just not giving any direction. So we come to an end of this session with this. So we went through research questions, research objectives, research hypothesis. In research hypothesis, we saw there are different kinds of research hypothesis, like null hypothesis, alternate hypothesis, or instead of alternate, you can say research hypothesis and null hypothesis. Then in research hypothesis, you can have directional hypothesis, non-directional hypothesis. So if we have to sum up this whole process, you can take it upon yourself. In the morning, you wake up and you think about a movie, whether it's good or bad, whether it will entertain you or not. See, then you do some literature review, you check some reviews and all that, and then sitting on your bed, you decide, I will go and watch the movie to see if it entertains me. So now what happens? From your question, you have come to your objective. Then at the door of the cinema hall, you say, I'm sure it will entertain me. what do? You come up with a hypothesis. You go to the movie, watch the movie. When you come out, then you either accept your hypothesis or reject your hypothesis. So if that movie has really entertained you, then you say, I accept the hypothesis, which I said before that this movie will entertain me. If it is a bakwas movie, you'll say, I reject this hypothesis because it has not entertained me. So having said that, I think we have come at the end of our research project about introduction to research. There is one aspect of this whole process, that is the research methodologies, which I want to go through formally. Hopefully, we will not call this lecture as a last. Maybe that will be the last lecture. But for all practical purpose, we have touched upon almost everything that a beginner, a researcher would like to understand or know. So hopefully we meet once again for the whole exposure to the research methodology chapter in a formal and a short way. Till that time, sayonara. Thank you for being there. I hope all this lecture series has been informative, entertainment, and will be of value to you throughout your research life. Thank you very much, guys. Bye.